Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello, Tim. I don't know if you can hear me.
I don't know why
I don't
I'm
know if you
getting
can hear me.
some sort
Hello,
of
Tim. I
reverb.
don't know if you can hear me.
I don't know why
Hello,
I'm
Tim.
getting
I don't know if you can hear me.
some sort
Hello,
of
Tim. I don't know
reverb.
if you can hear me.
I don't know why
Hello,
I'm
Tim. I
getting
don't know if you can hear me.
some sort
Hello,
of
Tim. I don't know
reverb.
if you can hear me.
I don't know why
Hello,
I'm
Tim. I don't know if you can hear me.
Everything I'm
Hello,
saying
Tim. I
is
don't know if you can hear
feeding
me.
back to
I
me.
don't know why
Hello,
I'm
Tim. I don't know if you can hear me.
Everything I'm
I
Hello,
don't know
Tim.
saying
I
why
don't
I'm
know if you
getting
can hear me.
back to me.
some sort
Hello,
of
Tim. I
reverb.
don't know if you can hear me.
Everything I'm
I
Hello,
don't know
Tim.
saying
I
why
don't
I'm
know if you
getting
can hear me.
some sort
Hello,
of
Tim. I
reverb.
don't know if you can hear me.
everything I'm
I don't know
Tim.
why
Hello,
I'm
saying
Tim.
getting
I don't know if you can hear me.
some sort
Hello,
of
Tim. I don't know
reverb.
if you can hear me.
everything
I
I'm
don't know
saying
why
Hello,
I'm
Tim. I
getting
don't know if you can hear me.
everything I'm
Hello,
saying
Tim. I
is
don't know if you can hear me.
back to
I
me.
don't know why
Hello,
I'm
Tim. I don't know if you can hear me.
Everything I'm
Hello,
I don't know
Tim. I
saying
why
don't know
I'm
if you can
getting
hear me.
back to
I
me.
don't know why
Hello,
I'm
Tim. I don't know if you can hear me.
Everything I'm
Hello,
I don't know
Tim. I
saying
why
don't know
I'm
if you
getting
can hear me.
I don't know why
Hello,
I'm
Tim. I
getting
don't know if you can hear me.
everything I'm
I
Hello,
don't know
Tim.
saying
I
why
don't
I'm
know if you
getting
can hear me.
I don't know why
Hello,
I'm
Tim. I
getting
don't know if you can hear me.
everything I'm
Hello,
I don't know
Tim.
why
I don't
I'm
know if you
getting
can hear me.
everything I'm
Hello, Tim. I
saying
don't know if you can hear me.
everything I'm
I
Hello,
don't know
Tim.
why
Hello,
I'm
Tim. I don't know if you can hear me.
everything I'm
Hello, Tim. I
saying
don't know if you can hear me.
everything I'm
I don't know
Hello,
why
Tim.
I'm
saying
I don't know if you can hear me.
everything I'm
Hello,
I don't know
Tim. I
why
don't
saying
know
I'm
if you can
getting
hear me.
everything
I
I'm
don't know why
Hello,
I'm
saying
Tim. I don't know if you can hear me.
everything I'm
Hello,
I don't know
Tim. I
why
don't
I'm
know if you
getting
can hear me.
I don't know why
Hey, Tim. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, very good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you good.
Good, good. All right. Dwayne came on there just a minute ago. He should be back.
There he is.
Very good.
Or there's someone. Oh, it's not Tim.
We got about 5 minutes.
Okay, yeah. Tim, I don't know. Did you hear that? My had a reverb happening. Something
Yeah, it was
happened with
moving.
my
It was.
Yeah, I could hear it.
It should be gone
when
now.
when I came on,
yeah.
that's all I could hear.
Yeah.
Man,
Wakes
that
people.
was strange.
I was still getting everything set up, and I was trying to type to you, and I had the computer sound on.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
That's funny.
Well, it was broadcasting very well.
Yeah, I went ahead.
Oh,
I went ahead and started it up. We should have the live soon coming on now. Can you
I
see
like
that?
that. Yeah, we got 4:39, 4:30. We have 4 minutes,
Yeah.
5 minutes.
So
I
right on,
like the
right on.
your little emoji with your spinning your chainsaw tooth. That's pretty cool.
That's not an emoji. That's real.
Oh, well, yeah.
If
Okay.
you believe that. It's
Well, I mean, it's a digital thing, but that's pretty cool how you did that.
it took me a while. A lot of practice.
That's really neat. Was that an Oregon tooth, or did you? It seems like a big thing these days with 3D printers. It's like they've
But
invented something by making the big tooth.
that was Oregon too.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a big
Sure
one, though.
looks like.
Still is. It's
Yeah.
back over there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Heavy duty.
Yep.
Let's see here. I think I've got Kevin on. There's David. All right, I think I've got YouTube chat and I got Facebook chat over here, so we should have everything. Any questions come in? And I've got the meeting chat up if you guys need to type anything. I think I could take that down. We got right at 2 minutes. I'm gonna
Mhm.
speed that up just a little bit. We're always punctual. And David, you're muted.
Oh, look at that.
You hear the sound on the video?
Mm.
No?
No, I don't think so. I don't hear any other sound other than your voice.
All right. Welcome to Thursday Night Saws, everyone. I appreciate you dropping by tonight. We've got an action-packed evening for everyone. We've got, we're going to be, main topic is going to be arborist training in North America. And I've got quite a discussion panel here tonight. And then we've got a little bit of discussion going to be open mic on, anything as far as saws and saw chain goes, that's for sure. And then I want to discuss a little bit about Zoom training we got coming up, storm sawing workshop, training and chainsaw consultation. And also e-store clearance is still going on. And we also have our legacy instructor. And so hopefully all of that is good. Panel here tonight is quite amazing. We've got from Canada, the one and only Dwayne Newstetter. And, I didn't know they had TV up there, but I guess they do. He's on the TV here. And then we have Tim O'Brien. A lot of people know him as Cotton Top 3 off of YouTube, and logging and tree care. And we've got, looks like back over here, David Breeden, David with Husqvarna, Arbor Pro, and we have Warren Causey. Warren is with Sirens Project and also an arborist out of Georgia. And then I think Chris Childs should be checking in here in a little bit too. So it's going to be a good panel to work with. And I just thought that we would kind of start off and the other guys have been on here, Dwayne, but you haven't been on here. Tell a little bit about yourself and where you're from. I see your son got a deer back there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that deer actually, that's the first deer I ever shot.
Oh, it's yours. I got you
Yeah,
now.
yeah, that's the first one I ever a mule deer when I was 15 years old. So it's old. Yeah. Okay. Well, my name is Dwayne Newstater. I'm president of Arboriculture Canada Training and Education, and we started the company in '99. Prior to that, I had worked at a college in I guess you'd call it a junior college, I think, in the U.S., but it was a agriculture college that had a horticulture diploma program and had subsets. In one of them, they decided to have the arboriculture. So I developed the arboriculture diploma program in the early '90s, mid '90s, and taught there until the early 2000s, and then started private training. And I think I met you, Tim, at an Arbor Master course. You were teaching the chainsaw stuff. I would have been, and you actually delivered it up here. You probably remember that. That would have been in, I want to say 95,
Probably about
something
there.
like that. Something like that. That was, my first introduction to, really what I consider my eyes were like, I think, to really open to what, how to improve safety, particularly with notch opening and understanding how the hinge works. I think was probably of the many takeaways, the two biggest. But I've gone on with the company, building the company. We've built quite a niche market where we're pretty well known in Canada. We're probably do more arborist training than any one company in Canada. No, like we're the only coast to coast provider, so we provide right across the continent or the country, I should say, and train a lot of many of the major municipalities in the use of chainsaws and rigging and climbing. We have quite a stable of contract instructors. I developed the curriculum and so on, and some of that skills goes back to being involved with you back in the very early days of Arbor Master, actually. But yeah, that I've been involved with ISA, and I've been a trainer in the realm of arboriculture since '92, and in the tree business before that, running companies and working and right, basically from dragon brush on up. So one of those people like some of us that basically out of high school, I one way or another ended up doing tree work and more in the arboriculture realm and never left.
And you have a couple sons now, don't you? Or one, at least I
Yeah,
know.
two sons. Yes, yeah, yeah. And by the way, the training company is a family business. So when I was on Husqvarna's team of pros for many years, and when that contract came in, the wife said, "Well, hey, I think this is maybe something might actually work. This training company idea," and she decided to stay home and really focus on building the business. And yeah, raised our two sons. I was on the road a lot, but she ran the business end here. And yeah, one of my sons is a fish and wildlife officer now. He's a full-time sergeant in the fish and wildlife. I think that's what you call it, kind of like a warden down there. I think you have fish and wildlife or fins and feathers or fish
Natural
cop sort of
resources.
thing.
Natural resources.
Yeah, that's right. And then my oldest son went on to get his urban forestry degree. He went on a football scholarship to university at University of British Columbia and graduated from there. Spent a few years working at. He's worked at some of the private tree care companies. Worked at Bartlett. He's worked at Bouchard Gardens, so he's got some rounded experience, and then decided just last fall to join the training company. So now he's on full time with helping us, helping mom and dad, and maybe we'll see. We'll see. Maybe he might follow in his dad's footsteps. But yeah, it is a family business.
Oh, wow. And where exactly are you in Canada now?
Right. Well, we're still where we've always been. We had we're in Alberta. Where you were when you did it. Like you trained. I think the chainsaw course was up it was near, it was in Edmonton area, and we're just south of there. So Calgary's the closest major city, but Alberta, the climate here, if you want to put it into United States realm, Calgary and Denver are very similar in altitude and climate, right? So that's aspen forests, mountains. The Rocky Mountains are in the skyline from where I live. So very dry, arid, high elevation. That's the kind of terrain. Lots of spruce, lots of aspen.
Well, every time I
But
see it, there seems to be a lot of snow.
well, not all. Well, just recently, it is winter, so usually the white stuff goes with that. But we have snow right now for sure. But the summers are, like I said, you take Denver's climate, you're pretty much looking at what we got.
Hmm. Very good, very good. Well, so what do you have? You have several programs going right now. You're doing a train the trainer instructor program. You've got all types of climbing. You got bucket truck safety. You've got gosh, just about every facet, I guess, going on as far as the training opportunities up there.
Yeah, it was I don't know what point in time I realized, as a training company, our greatest asset is our instructors. And I realized also it wasn't really what we were teaching, but how we taught it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was what spurred me on into developing the trainer program. Because we call it chainsaw trainer because actually most of what we do is chainsaw training, just because of the type of tool it is. Most of our customers ask us, and we do a lot of, we've been around 25 years now, so we get a lot of really weird requests. Like we do training for police and for military, for real specialized weird places you never thought chainsaws would be used. But and we have a bit of a reputation for that, so at least here in Canada. But as our so that's what I'm mostly involved with these days is the trainer stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But as our the utilities, we do a lot of training for a lot of the major utilities in Canada, and it's all around power line restoration, they like to call it. They don't want to make them chainsaw operators because they're linemen first, so they call the course power line restoration. It's a bit of a political statement, but they don't want like contractors that do utility trimming to think that they're suggesting that the linemen are going to do that work. So what the linemen do is cut the trees off of the wires during or right after the storm, which in and of itself is quite an interesting loading situation, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
You got major tension issues and all kinds of forces at work, and the stories that these linemen have are unbelievable. I used I don't know if you remember, and it wasn't part of the curriculum, but you showed me a key notch. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
And like to slide a piece out,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then also how a mismatch could be utilized. And it was just pre-course or after course banter, and we got talking, and I carried with me those techniques for quite a while, and we'd been doing chainsaw training for a lot of municipalities. Company was growing. This would be early 2000s, and one of the guys one time at a course, there had been they were doing some clearing on a lot, and we were working on trees nearby because there was a lot of trees to cut, and there were trees that had been pushed over and lodged in other trees. And he says, this is all fine and good, you showing this stuff about cutting and falling trees, but what about trees like that? He says, we get to deal with this after storms, and nobody ever trains us on that. And I said, well, there is some techniques and some of the stuff you and I had played with very little bit, but I had, worked, just doing it as a tree. If a hung tree existed, how do you get it down and safely? And so I built a program around it, and I got lucky in naming it. There's so much in a name. I named it Hazard and Danger Tree Cutting and Falling.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I swear, I tell you, I think the name is half the reason it's so damn popular. It just sounds cool. And it's probably one of our biggest selling courses, not just to municipalities, but also to private customers, because we do our company really trains privately, and what you look at on our website is like way less than half of the actual volume of work we do, because we don't advertise all of our private contracts on our website. But with those techniques, and again, Tim, I don't know, a lot of the stuff I teach when it comes to chainsaw in particular traces back to stuff I learned from you in taking that course, the precision felling course of what it was called at the time, and then interactions we've had ever since. But interestingly enough, that same course and the major content of it is getting hung in trees up is what we adapted for the linemen, because it was the same deal. And the first 2 times we delivered that course, we were using ropes, which is probably the biggest thing that separates us from arborists, I guess, from everyone else that does chainsaw training in a way, is because we have access to ropes and know how to use pulleys and ropes. At least that's the way it seems to be here. Now, linemen have access to a lot of cool equipment, but when we first brought our pulleys and stuff, prusik mining pulleys and such, to show them to make a cut, hook onto the tree, and you can pull it from a distance where you're safe. That's the key component behind it, is risk and proximity, very closely connected. The further you are away from something, the safer you can be from something happening.
Right.
And a rope offers you that, gives you that distance. And but what was interesting, one of the guys told we should just use our hand line. And I have to say, Tim, once again, I'll never forget the story. And some of you on this call that have probably been trained by Tim may have heard him talk about the mental toolbox or the toolbox. And it's got to be open. Just have an open mind and try. And the specifically, I think the story you told, Tim, was you talked about the junk drawer. We all got a junk drawer at home, full of little stuff and little bent screwdrivers and this and that. And, and you never would ever throw any of that stuff away. And if anyone ever tried to, you'd say, hey, what the heck? And the reason is you know what they're all for. And that always stuck with me. And I have stolen that analogy. If I've stole it once from your trainings, I've stolen it 1,000 times. And I tell people that all the time as a way to honor what someone brings to a course, the knowledge that they bring. And this is particularly true with chainsaw, I find. They're wiggling all their fingers and toes. They got there. What they knew isn't necessarily. Maybe you can help them improve it, but let's just share all of our tools in our little drawers and see what we can learn together. And it was in that spirit where they mentioned this piece of equipment, the hand line. And I was like, well, let's see it. And it's, every lineman has one. And it's just a hank of rope that they use for hauling stuff up in the pole. And they have a little sling on it that wraps around the cross arm. And then it has a pulley or a block that they can lift and hoist. And they also use it for rescue. Well, it's the perfect thing for tying onto a tree that's hung. Make a key notch or a mismatch cut, anchor one end off. They have a simple 2-to-1 and they can break it free. And you can just see the lights go off and they're like, wow, where the heck? They never thought of doing that. And that's all it's been, I still am astonished to this day. We'll go to, and like a lot, the major utilities in Canada, there's several of them that we train all of their linemen, and they get a ticket that qualifies them in this way. And something else is it's always hands on. With our company, there's always a class portion. It's the theoretical and the practical, but we always make sure to get in the field and get them on the saws, on the ropes, cutting notches, cutting. You got to get people cutting. And again, I think that, the first time I took a chainsaw course where I actually saw the instructor not just talk the talk, but walk the walk and do it. And not just do it, the confidence, I guess you could say. And also, I'll never forget the apparel. The first time I saw someone wearing every piece of safety equipment and making it look good. It wasn't a day after I was done that chainsaw course. I had every piece of the boots. I had the bib coveralls. I had the same safety glasses. You gave me a pair of gloves. I was a walking Tim Art. If you took a picture of me a week later, I'd look just like you.
I've got a couple old pictures. You did look different.
Yeah. Well, yeah, my hair was dark and black, and I mean, heck, it was 30 years, over 30 years ago. Well, about 30 years ago. It'll be 30 years ago next year, so 29 years ago.
Only thing I remember of that one up there was the Canadian Department of Labor.
Oh yeah, right. You got hassled at the border. I remember that.
Well,
Yes.
that and then at the class, remember we had one of the inspectors was there and he's
Oh yeah.
in the trees. But
The
then
one that hung the tree, you mean?
no, we were cutting those pine stumps,
Yeah.
and he said you can't have the people there in the area. And I said, well, how are you going to have hands-on training? He said, well, you're going to have one at a time. And remember, we had like 12 or 15. And
Yeah, yeah.
2 weeks after that, I got one of the nicest apology letters I have ever had. I wish I still had that one. He was so
Wow.
sorry that once he was there at the training and understood how important it is, how we and you still do,
Yeah,
get the
yeah,
guys in there so they can see and watch and do
yeah.
and it's all. Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
I remember that quite vividly.
I remember that too, and I remember, to this, it really paved the way because, the the justification and the reasoning that we used, which was sound and reasonable and well put, it has served to communicate that message ever since.
Hmm.
It is something I do find people sometimes get. It's an easy one for people to nitpick on. I find like I've had it happen. We've had a couple. We are a contractor thinking of hiring us, and we've heard you guys do this, and it happen, and they see the class take place and how it's done. Then they always change their tune, but it's that whole concept of change needing to be feared and resisted.
Yeah.
And we fear that what we don't understand. It's certainly true. Something else, Tim, I'll never forget is you said, I was kind of shocked when you said it, but you said, don't believe a word I say. Try it for yourself. To get out there. And I was really, the biggest challenge I had when I took that chainsaw course with you back in 94 or 5 was steering trees and
Mm.
turning trees, right? And you were saying, as long as you don't stay there while it falls, you back away, get it out, get down that escape route, which made sense to me. I could accept that, but I still believed I could turn them, leave it thick on one side, thin on the other. And I mean, we can go on and on about that discussion, right? And and it's still today just this huge thing. And I had a job that came up probably not very long after that course, a few months, and I had to fell a whole bunch of trees. And I thought to myself, okay, this is it. This is it. I'm proving it once and for all. And son of a gun, not one damn thing. I couldn't make it work unless I cut while it was falling, where
Mhm.
I'm like standing right there, right in the most dangerous place to be. And that was it. That was it. But it took until then for me to say no. And I've been a pretty hardcore, Can I tell you a story about that? It's quite a story. I was, well, I was doing a chainsaw trainer course up in northern Alberta. We hadn't started teaching our trainer course yet. This is a long time ago. And one of the guys in the class knew about the training that we'd been doing and knew that we were taking a stand on this steerage thing. And we would teach you can't steer trees. And if you do, you're in the danger zone. And just flat out refused. And he was one of the instructors. And I knew the person, but I was there to take this course from him. And there was a connection through Husqvarna, how I ended up there. But the class ended one day, and it had come up in class, week-long program. And he said, okay, this is it. I'm going to prove to you once and for all. And this is several, I'd been felling trees without the belief. I'd proven I couldn't do it. And I was teaching that you shouldn't try to steer trees. And so I said, okay, well, let's do it. And he started to cut trees, and we had big spruce, beautiful trees that were big cut block, lots of trees to cut, no problem. It was just the two of us. He wanted to bet truck pink slips. If he could prove it to me, he'd get my truck. And I'm like, look, I'm not into it that hardcore, man. Like, I'm just saying it doesn't work. Like, from what I'm out, here's why. And he said, okay, let's do it. So he started cutting, and he'd leave it thick, and it would land right on the mark. And he'd walk away like he right on the mark, right on the mark. It's like, And then the third or fourth one, it was about 5 or 6 feet over. And I thought, oh shit, here we go. Okay, one's over. And I said, well, that one worked, I guess. And he's like, well, yeah. But it had gone the other way. It went to the thick side or the thin side. It failed the wrong way. So now he was really befuddled, eh? So he did another one, and he cut it really thick, and he couldn't, it was leaning and everything a little bit, but he had to wedge it because it was too thick. So he wedged it and had to put 2 wedges in. And I noticed he put his bore cut above the second wedge. And I learned to stack wedges from you, Tim. And I'd never seen the technique before. I'd never seen using 2 bore cuts to do it. I'd only seen trying to, stick them together and try to, spin on it to keep them from slipping, and stuff wood in there or whatever. But now, and I remember you teaching, always bore into the stump, because you go above there, you're going to get into, action. You're into the hinge wood, you're above in the loaded wood, you're in the tree that's moving. And so I watched him do one, and it worked and everything. And I'm thinking, that's interesting. He's stacking above. So then he doesn't, and again, tree goes right where it's supposed to. So we're on tree number 8 or 9, and he's getting pretty choked about not being able to prove his point. And he cuts one even thicker, and he's got to go into a 3rd bore cut, 3rd wedge now. Tree's just, the wedge is the hinge is too thick and won't bend yet, won't break even. And he's going to do his 3rd bore. And I stop him and I just say, hey, I've been told you're supposed to bore below. And he's like, what? I said, well, I'm just noticing you're boring above. And I said, I've been told if you do that, you can get pinched. And he puts his muffs back down and he sets the boring. And I kid you not, 10 seconds, not even. And he welded his bar into that tree so tight, there was no was coming out. And he turns us off after realizing it was so obvious how, like, that's it. When it's in, it's in. And he pops and looks over and he says, you mean like that? And I said, no, I've never seen it done. I've never seen it happen, but that's exactly what I was told could happen. And that's why you bore below. and here's the worst part of the story though. The next day he deduced that it was because the wood was frozen that it didn't work, and he still stood by it.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, anyways, I've had a great. Go ahead.
I watched one on YouTube this week, a big cedar, and it went over. It had jack and wedges, and went over, and it hung in another small cedar in front of it, and he beat and pulled and pushed and everything on that thing, and he had to go cut down the other 2 trees, which he went out in front of it to cut down the other 2 trees, and this was a big gnarly cedar, and when he got down, you could see the problem. It's probably a 5-foot diameter tree, but he had plenty of hinge on there.
Right.
Because it couldn't go past it, and people have all kinds of excuses about. And a hinge can be used in a lot of different ways, but it has to be bendable to work.
Yep. Yeah. I think that was another thing that, I think it's human nature to, when you get nervous, to leave a little more there, and it gets you in trouble. The thicker is not better, particularly when it comes to hinge wood.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, Dwayne, I want to introduce to you and let Tim tell a little bit about himself.
Absolutely.
If you go on YouTube and look at Cotton Top 3, he's had logging videos and tree care videos now for about 10 years or so, Tim? Tell us about what you do.
Yeah, the first ones I ever posted was back in 2009, and then consistently got where I was posting basically every day in 2014. So that's grown from, nothing all the way to 130,000, over 130,000 plus subscribers, and
Wow.
70 million total views on YouTube. And it's been the YouTube thing is, a lot of people don't understand it or whatever, but it's actually got me to where I am today, making a full living to where I could walk away from the family business and start my own business solely on my own in the tree care world, which I had been dabbling in since I was a teenager, to where that's what I do full time now. And then along with that came a lot of questions, and lo and behold, I had been I could cut trees, but there was several things about the dynamics of trees that I did not understand in the 90s. And we had a guy that came up. We cut for Weyerhaeuser. Weyerhaeuser real big in our area. And a Weyerhaeuser brought a guy from Auburn University up here, and Tim had trained him, and he was going to do a training session for the Weyerhaeuser people. And I was able, because they was doing it on our job, so I was able to get involved in it. And when I seen what he did, that was the missing piece of the puzzle that I needed to put the icing on the cake for me, so to speak, to where I had no doubt if I wanted a tree to do this and land here, that was a piece that I needed to make that happen. When he explained the 2% DBH, hinge thickness, how to bore, because man, like running the chainsaws is something that I always understood, always got learned reactive forces right off the bat, but I didn't have that polished aspect to where, I was sitting there showing it in videos and what have you. And then it turned into, and I hadn't even met Tim at the time. I knew who he was, but I had not met him. And then I started doing training stuff. I was working with Husqvarna on some stuff and everything. Another guy that worked with David there. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, through my videos, people are asking me so many questions. What would you think if I started offering some training here, let people come to me and I do it? So I started doing about 8 classes a year, some in the spring, some in the fall, and would limit it to 10 people. And they would come right here to my place. Fortunate enough to have access to a place that's only about a mile down the road from me here. And so we do classroom stuff. I have a real big shop, heated, cool, bathroom, all that stuff like that. We do set up saw stations for them and all that, do all that, and then actually go to the woods and do full-blown cutting storm scenarios where I go through there and I'll mark stuff with orange paint, and I'll have a laser pointer with me, and we'll just take turns letting them cut, letting them get hung up, letting them kind of diagnose or dissect the way they need to cut it. I'll let them get hung up, and then we'll get them out, and then we'll explain, okay, well, this is why this happened or anything like that. And, all the way to where I am today. I never thought I'd make a living off of making sawdust, but here it goes, so.
They had a great logging operation with his family, and then
Right.
he left that. He's got a lift and a bunch of climbing stuff, and he's done quite his things on YouTube are good training, and it helps a lot of people out. And then the other guy over here, I think you've met before. He was a little bit younger then too, but that's David Breeden.
Okay.
Yeah, I can attest that Dwayne used to have black hair, and he's still pretty good telling the story. I was trying to figure out the last time I saw him. It was over 20 years ago. We were doing something with Arbor Master, and I'm not sure where we were. I mean, we might have been in Louisville. I don't know if you guys came to the back then GIE and the Louisville Expo were separated. And I think you were out there. We were all at the saw pit. I think I remember you carving some mushrooms or something.
Yeah,
And so I remembered that one day years later. I went to a show down in South Georgia, and I tried to carve a mushroom like you, and it didn't turn out so good. And we had people in the stands, and people were grabbing their children walking away because I finally had to scrap that idea. So I can blame you for that.
Okay.
But
You gotta be careful. A mushroom can take on an ugly, suggestive form quite quickly if you're not careful.
yeah, real fast. The more you carve on it, the worse it can get. So, but anyway, so I started, you know, worked for Tim, and doing Tim's training program, and just add my personality to it. And like you said, you got your own stories as you go along, and your own jokes, and you take some things from what he does, but essentially it's his program. And I'm still with Husqvarna, and as a result of being so close to the tree care industry, I became a certified arborist myself, and found that it, really took down all the barriers, for tree care. They don't see me as a chainsaw sales guy anymore. And, I'm one of them. And, I do I'm a consulting arborist. I'm tree risk assessment qualified. So I do, tree risk assessments. I've actually worked on some legal cases for, where people trespass and go across property lines and cut trees. And so I worked on quite a few of those cases over the last couple of years, and, doing some of Tim's training now. So really busy. I own a tree care company. Also, I'm, absentee in that, silent partner. My son and another guy that might as well be my son are running that, and they're doing very well with it. And they're being safe every day, and that's really the only thing that matters to me. So that's kind of where I am right now. I had hair back then too, Dwayne, and it was dark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The other one that's he got tied up tonight, I guess, was Chris Childs. He's with God's Pit Crew, and he has a uprooted tree company up in Virginia, and he's been helping out on the training since I kind of ended up slowing down. But the other guy's coming on a little bit, Warren Causey. Warren's here with us tonight. He heads up a sirens project, and so he's getting involved in a lot of training with taking care of disaster groups and all. So as Chris, that's a lot of that going on. So Warren, tell a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm I would say, relatively new compared to everybody here on the panel to the tree care industry. I became a ISA certified arborist last year. Pretty involved in the Georgia Arborist Association, where I met David. And we specialize in tree care. Our nonprofit Sirens Project specializes in tree care after disasters, and so we're trying to kind of bridge that gap for best practices in that industry as it relates to disasters, and even getting into hopefully some tree planting, replanting initiatives this year as well in areas that have been impacted by tornadoes and hurricanes and stuff like that. But my education is in engineering. I'm a mechanical engineer, and so I like to kind of apply a lot of the engineering mechanics and dynamics to tree care, and kind of the math that goes on in rigging scenarios, and some of the forces that you can experience, within the tree and stuff like that. Kind of put the science and math behind why are certain things happening, given certain inputs. And so that's been a lot of fun trying to incorporate some of that into our training as well. And yeah, we're just gearing up for this next tornado season, here in the Southeast. I'm from Georgia, where David's from as well. And tornadoes can kind of happen any time of the year. I think Tim knows about that too. Both Tims, really. Tim's from Georgia, and I think Tim O'Brien, you're from Mississippi, I believe. Is that
Mississippi.
correct? Yeah.
Yep.
So you get your fair share of of big tornadoes, and I've been chasing tornadoes since 2011, and that's one thing that we try to do as far as disaster response goes, is kind of be a rapid response team as the disaster is unfolding. So we try to incorporate our passion for severe weather with tree care and kind of marry those two together. So we typically deploy a small route clearance team ahead of major tornado outbreaks and hurricane landfalls and stuff like that, and pair up with local EMAs and kind of assist with their route clearance and stuff. But definitely have fallen in love with the tree care industry. It's got a lot of similarities to engineering. The problem solving and kind of putting those things together is just so much fun and really rewarding when you put a plan together and it's successful. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and kind of what we're up to.
Cool.
The other one that kind of is, I think he's hanging out online tonight. He's kind of shy, didn't want to get his picture on TV, I guess. But he's Robert Albritton. He's about my best friend. You've met him before. Everybody knows the Jambo Man, and he's the Claw now at a lot of the events with the tree stuff and stuff, Cheryl Tree. And he's hanging out with me now for many, many years. He was involved in some of the first Arbor Master courses, and I didn't know he lived close to me. But we met Christmas shopping at Walmart one year, and I figured out he didn't live far away. So we've been good friends since, and families. But he has a tree company out of Douglasville, Georgia, and so he's very, very grounded tree man. Well, he climbs like crazy, not grounded that way, but he started off after a storm back 30 years ago, and he's still going strong. Small crew, but keeps going strong every year. So he's one of our panel people. So that's kind of the guys who've been hanging out with me on Thursday nights, Dwayne, and it's
Okay.
it's been a great time. We got one question came in here from Michael Oxman. He said, any of these old timers remember the discussion thread called Tilted, tapered hinge on the arborsite.com?
I don't I know Michael, but I don't recall that thread specifically. But I mean, the topic it astounds me how it's still defended and discussed with such zeal. And but I don't remember that one specifically. I don't know if anyone else does.
I don't think I've ever heard tilted, but I know I've heard a lot about tapered hinges. That's for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Do you know, Tim, where or how? Like, do you have any background on where, like, how that came into being? Like, I was taught it before I learned from you. Like, it was, and I don't know where the people that taught it to me learned it from, but like, where does that come from?
Well, I think from many, many years ago, a lot of people staying with the stump, watching a tree, and things start to twist when you take fiber off of it. And the guys would stay there and try to manipulate the actual steering of the tree. And major cause of struck by fatalities. There's no doubt about it. But I had a dinner one night. Soren and I, we were working with Scott Paper down on the Tom Bigby Waterway going down to the Gulf, Alabama, Mississippi. And a guy named Steve Conway, I don't know if you've ever seen his books, but Steve Conway, it was president of Scott Paper Company, he has 2 felling books that's been in about every arbor class, harvesting class for years and years and years. and he was down. We were eating catfish and on the waterway down there on a tour thing they were doing, and we were talking about, one of the guys brought up about steering with the hinge. And he said, well, we used a tapered hinge for many years, but he said, and I've got in my books, he said, we talk about the tapered hinge, but everybody tries to steer with it. We use the tapered hinge for support on the uphill side. And
Right.
it would be that you might leave 5 inches over here down to 2 inches over here. But if you're going to swing the tree, you've got to take it off, a quarter to a half away up into the tree for the tree to actually twist on a portion of hinge. And I think that's what most people try to do, is take that fiber off to swing the trees around, but very, very dangerous. Especially, it worked pretty good on open front logging, but when you get into situations where you've got select cuts or you've got arborist situations, and a limb or a top touches, you've got swing in a lot of different directions sometimes, and a lot of broken limbs and struck by situations come off of that. But that was something that they would taper the hinge to support the uphill side. And then Soren kind of pioneered something that I guess now I see it on YouTube and stuff as a shark's gill, the where you had a vertical bore cut to produce the hinge, and then two bore cuts behind that was vertical, that actually worked in a breakable tapered hinge that would go from the back hinge to the next hinge to the next hinge, and that would take and support the uphill side, and you still ended up with a hinge all the way across that would then take over, and that was a 10% hinge basically, or a little less. But the that bore cut type of tapered, or we call it a triple hinge, was what he called it. And we taught that for several years on real heavy leaners. It works pretty good, side leaners. About the only one I have seen was Top Branch on YouTube. He does it as we used to teach it. And that's about the only one I have seen that was actually. The rest of them are boring all the way through on most all of the videos, and that's kind of defeating the purpose, because it just kind of rips the third hinge and the second hinge down to the first one in just a bunch of pulled fibers and splits. When you set it up right, it's pretty cool.
Interesting. I was in Australia doing some training, and or was it New Zealand? I think it was Australia. It was Australia. It was definitely Australia. And the tongue and groove notch, or the key notch, used in the hinge fashion, where you and an old fella in Australia said that's what they used for side leaners, because it would keep it from, that groove would keep it from wanting to twist out or lift out. And that was his thoughts of the origin of a tongue and groove notch. And I had never heard that before. Like, I've seen people do that, like kind of a key notch concept for falling a tree, but not in relation to specifically to side leaning. Have you ever heard that before?
Side leaning, and especially I watch a lot of videos from West Coast. It doesn't work very well with a Humboldt, because it basically pops itself off. But if you think about it, Soren is probably, I think, one of the originators of that. It was from Swedish Force Institute, so I assume he had something to do with that. And he basically called it a bridge tree. That's what they used to use in the bench method on the spruce and the firs and the pines. They would put that bridge tree cut on there to use across, and it locked in so that the forwarders and skidders didn't kick those away from wet areas or across creeks or whatever. And then he used that to keep that tree on the stump for a bench method of delimbing. He would use that, and that was taking and coming up a little bit, straight cut in, and then basically a open face cut. And when it dropped down in, it kind of locked. But if you've got side weight on the tree, or you're trying to get it to turn sideways, it just rolls off. So the hinge is really what's going to keep it there. If it drops down in there, it's not going to twist, but the hinge is what's going to keep it straight to target.
Yeah. And there's a lot of leverage. I mean, you could see even with like we use it for a hung tree scenario, and you got to have enough. Like what we kind of use as a rule of thumb is divide the tree into thirds, and each side of the tongue and the groove are equal part in size, and that the tree's got to be at least 3 times the diameter of your bar in order to use the technique. If the tree's smaller than that, the chances are that the sides will be too weak and could fail under the load.
It's
And
like
not to
a
mention
backleaner
that,
technique. It just flips out.
yeah. But rules of thumb are a big thing in this industry, and but the 10%, 5 to 10%. I remember I was in Italy and a couple of the Swedish guys came down what are their names now? But they were taking over some of the game of logging stuff for Soren. This is only when was this? This would have been in '04 or something. And they what was I saying here? Now I just lost my train of thought. But they what were we just talking about? The keynote. Shoot, I lost my train of thought. Oh well.
10% hinge.
Oh yeah, they were saying 7. It's 7. It's not 5. It's not 10. It's 7. I thought that was hilarious. Like, so big trees, little trees, they would change 7%. And then I don't know how well you know Svante Hansen. Svante is like, who can measure percentage? Big trees as thick as your thumb, little trees like your little finger. That's it. Which isn't that far off, like, and he says, because you can't expect these guys to be doing percentage math.
To me, the biggest thing is to have a plan of what you want to leave. Whatever you choose to leave, then that's what you leave. But most of the time, guys just, what I see is they just get back there and start cutting. And when the tree starts to move, they're watching to see what's going to happen. And if they cut too much, it happens. If they don't cut it up, it doesn't happen.
And the funny thing is, I don't know, but my experience was it would always stop if as soon as it started to move, you took off, it would always stop. It wasn't quite thin enough. And now you're going back and it's part way over, and I go, boy. And I call the pucker factor Dancing with the Devil. And the tune, the dance tune is bop 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 bop. Right? you're feathering that throttle and you're tapping the hinge, and it's just not a good place to be. And when I learned that the definitive, or that there was a measurement that it's like Tim was saying, my confidence went up immensely when I took your course, Tim, and because I could follow that plan, and I could review it, and by leaving the strap, the trigger, or whatever you want to call it, it gave me that time to assess everything. I could look at my notch. Okay, it's going to be on the ground. My hinge won't close. My hinge shouldn't fail. I've assessed my lean. I know how much going to fit. I've got my height measure. I've got my hazard sussed out. Now I've got my hinge thickness. Yep. It's both sides. It's level. It's not high. It's not low. It's not fat. It's not thin. All I got to do is release it. I've eliminated so many variables that this should work. And I could have that all in place before I released it. And that was probably, and I think to this day, when people get that, it's just a game changer, because it takes, what do you call it? The guesswork out of falling. I mean, it's still a tree, and you can't say for sure, but there's so many variables have been at least planned. And now, you said it all the time: plan your work your plan. And what's an accident? Unplanned event.
And I have people all the time say, well, it doesn't work when it's frozen or cold. I said, do you know Dwayne Newstetter? No, he's up in a cold part of Canada, and I think he's used it a couple times. He always says it works, And then you got people like Tim O'Brien that he's so accurate with the doggone hinges, it's unbelievable. He knows exactly what he's doing all the time, whether it's up in the tree on the bottom. I have people tell me, oh, it doesn't work up in the tree. But he makes it work. And that's what I like. I mean, when you people out there that are teaching, out there that have an understanding and a way to communicate it, that's the key.
You better have your stuff down pat when you're up in the tree, because you ain't got nowhere to go. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, running or moving is not an option up there. And once
No.
it starts moving, it's over with. I mean, you better have your stuff right, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It's yeah. And you know, the being able to have a measurement, you know, a lot of people, you know, you can have a lot of fun with it because you can, you know, literally measure it if you want. And it's great for discussions and crew talk, you know. I'm gonna leave 1.25 inch hinge on this. Come on, yeah, you watch. And the guys will be in there measuring it. And what a great learning thing, you know, like it just instills it. But I like what you said, Tim, about, you know, you can get a little overemphasis, I think, on exact numbers, although measurable results are great and great for teaching. But I try to always impart to guys, look, just try to have your hinge stay intact. The notch opening should facilitate that. Look at your slope of your land and look at the trunk of your tree and try to get those to be close, right? So that at least the notch doesn't have to close before that tree's on the ground. You do that, at least you're getting the full advantage of the hinge. Next, get the hinge thin enough that it can do its job and not too thick that it has to break before it starts to bend, which causes potential other problems, and not too thin that it fails unnecessarily. Here's the rules of thumb: cut safe. And you know the big one too. The real big one is the 5-15-90 rule. That one there is that I think probably almost more than anything else is what really convinces guys to change when they think about that one. You know, that one, it's a tough one to argue. And anybody that knows anyone that's been hurt, 90% of them were within 5 feet of the stump, and it happened right when the tree started moving. And then you can talk to anybody, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you know that actually is true with the guy I saw." When I get called to do an investigation on a tree falling thing, I know that it happened while he was cutting, and he was right there every time. Yet to have one where it wasn't. It's not true. There's one time it was a real fluke scenario. There is that 10%, but you know, do you want to be in the 90% or do you want to be in the 10%? It's a pretty easy decision.
Got another question here from BJ Wigglesworth. How much does species change your hinge percentage, or does the factor in it all? Is it that factor in it all?
Well, that's absolutely. I mean, you got to know the fiber on the different woods reacts differently. And for instance, a loblolly pine, they're like rebar. I mean, you can cut a hinge down on a loblolly even less than 5%, and you still that old wide grain stuff, and the stuff just bends and bends and bends, you know. And it all boils down to you got to know what you're dealing with at the tree that's in front of you at that point in time. And that comes with experience of cutting, you know, cutting limbs, bucking things up on the ground, getting a feel for it, and then working on standing stuff and knowing what you can get away with and what you can't.
I always tell people that it's not as much the species as it is specific trees, and that's the same fact. That's what you're saying there is that once you put the notch in or you start a cut and you see what, you know, you could have one pine tree that grew fast and you got another pine tree that grew very, very slow. And in the hardwoods, it does make a big difference, fast growth and slow growth. And then you got what most people deal with that have problems is rotted wood. And when you get to mushy rotted stuff, you don't have control.
No. Or dry,
one thing,
or really, really dry wood or dead wood, right? It doesn't, the time it just cracks and that's it. No hinging here.
you know, Tim, one thing I learned from you that's I found to be true. It's not, you know, about the species, but if you fell a tree and it does something kind of weird, you can almost expect the other trees in the area are going to do something similar. You know, when they've lived in the same environment, they're going to, you know, if there's something quirky that happens, you can expect, you know, if the you have hinges way too thick, like Tim said, they won't break away, or they don't hold very well. The other trees in that area are going to do the same stuff.
Get into areas with hollows.
Yeah.
It'd be several trees in there with heart rot and that kind of stuff, or get in areas that are wet and they're mushy, And so but it is, as Tim says, it's an experience thing. You've got to recognize that from your planning process, when you start to look at it, you see what that fiber is going to do. And it doesn't take you but 2 or 3 of them. Next time you come up to one that's kind of a similar look, you say, what? Yeah, I think it's going to do that,
And using a vertical bore to, this is a risk assessment technique on trees that you're only going to fell, not on trees you're just assessing. But, if you bore vertically, you don't damage as much what might be hingewood. And in the area of your notch, just bore through vertically. You can find out if it's hollow or how punky it is, or you can feel it. If you bore enough, you know what strong or weak wood feels like by drilling through it. And then you can also look at the chips and the color and the smell and how they bend. We'll teach that often. Like, check it out. Check out that if you're suspect, if you're not sure. Speaking of species, like hickory is one I think of. Holy moly. And as climbing arborists, we have the lucky, or we're fortunate, because we get to experience chunking down trees, like rigging off 6-7 foot chunks where there isn't much leverage. And there you really get an education in hingewood thickness, because holy moly, man, like you're pushing over a chunk of hickory. You gotta, you like a hair. Like you almost got to cut the damn thing off in order to get it to bend, right? And I mean, of course, if you have the whole tree, there's a lot more leverage there and force, but still, you don't need much in those things. Hickory's one that always would astound me. Oh man, I remember getting into a hickory in Venice, in Louisiana, and then we were doing training for the U.S. Coast Guard, and they had stripped a bunch of ivy off the thing. And I was cutting, and I felt this weird burning sensation, and I thought, oh, son of a gun. I thought there was chunks of the ivy and the bark fissures, and it was getting on my chainsaw pants and somehow going through to my legs. And as I'm cutting the notch and I'm feeling the chips and I'm watching, I'm thinking, this is really weird. And then all of a sudden I felt the tickle up where there on B, it got a little high. It was tickling the wedding furniture. And I realized, I looked down and I was standing in a pile of fire ants. And that's how far they'd gotten before I realized what was going on. And I just dropped everything right there in front of the whole class. It was all guys. And I just started brushing them off. But that was I just happened to be cutting hickory.
Didn't you go over to Hawaii in that Coco Canyon thing I sent y'all over?
Yeah, we did. We did a bunch of training with Scott and I down there in Hawaii. It was pretty wild too. The worst thing there is picking up brush. They have these centipedes there that like to hide under brush, and it doesn't take them long.
Oh.
And there are these really bright orange. They look like some sort of, transformer. They don't even look real. They're like metallically, and they glisten, and they look like a robot, and they bite, man. They don't sting in. They don't have the poison, but man, do they bite. And if you scoop up a brush pile, there's a dang good chance they're under there, and it doesn't take them long to get there. So that was the one big lesson in Hawaii. And
but did you go to Coco Canyon, or did y'all go up on the mountain on that training?
We did. We were in different locations. We were in at least 3 or 4 different locations, but we were right in Honolulu. And then we would go out from there, out to different spots. And I can't remember all the names of the places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they were talking about that. That's the reason why I had Scott go over there, and I know you ended up going with him. But at Coco Canyon, they had a area they were cleaning out for a new police area, and they had like elephant trees and stuff like that in there that
Yeah.
we were cutting because they were cleaning that. It was an old nursery site. We were cleaning them out. I didn't know if y'all got in that or not.
I don't remember if it was, I don't remember I don't remember elephant trees. I remember leopard trees, and then, the weird thing is that, you look to your right and you got blue ocean and white sand and palm trees, and it was surreal. And the other thing that was weird is we'd leave at 5:30, we'd leave the hotel. We were staying in Waikiki,
Yeah.
and everyone's on vacation. And Scott and I would go down the elevators and nobody's up because everyone, like, they're on vacation. And it would just be cleaning staff, and we'd be in our chainsaw get up, all decked out, and we'd get back around 3 in the afternoon. And we'd hop on the elevator with chainsaw dust on us and everything else. And they'd be looking at us like, what the heck are you guys doing here? It was pretty wild.
Yeah, that was a tough gig. I had to go over there about 6 times, and Laura, she loved that particular training. But also,
Yeah,
I worked
yeah.
over on Kaho'olawe on the cleanup project for the Navy and Parsons Land Management, and so I ended up over there for about 3 weeks on that deal. But that was pretty cool. They wanted some climber training, so I figured you and Scott could take care of that. So
Yeah, yeah.
they
Yeah,
really
it was.
enjoyed that.
Well, that's one thing about the traveling training. I've been since 94, I think. Well, it would have been 90. Nope. Yeah, 94, 95, right around the same time. It would have been within the year after you were here. I started 99 is when I really started traveling, but I already started a bit before that. But yeah, I don't do it as much anymore. I've finally figured it out not to be on the road so much, but I was on the road 290 to 300 days a year for a good 20 years.
Same here.
I remember Dr. Shigo, Alex would tell me, Dwayne, the road will eat you alive.
Yeah.
You got to start slowing down. Yeah, it wasn't totally far off of that, but I certainly really look back fondly on all of the experiences and people that I've met and places that I've been able. I trained in every state but 5. I haven't trained in every one, but I have trained in every state but 5.
I did every state
So,
but 3.
yeah, of course. And it's just nice to have that experience for sure. But luckily I managed to keep the family together through it. But that was more my wife's doing than mine, I think.
My thing is nobody ever knows who we are or where we're from. Nobody has any history anymore. There's a lot of people out that are sharing information and doing stuff, and that's the way it should be. But it's kind of like, where did you get that information from? When did you start training like that? When did you use that notch? How did you learn about this and that?
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and it all goes back to one little Swedish dude, most of
Isn't
it.
it funny? And isn't it interesting how I still find it interesting, and I'm not in the field as much. I still go out in the field, and train on site and everything else. But you still find a lot of people don't know or haven't heard about it. I mean, I've been teaching it for almost 30 years,
Yeah.
and you longer. You think, like, it's astonishing to me. Really, it is. But I think I don't know. Is it, you guys experience that too?
Yeah, I hear it all. Like I say, people say, I've been using this. That's the way I've always cut. Yeah, yeah. But I know when it started. I don't ever say that, but it's something to where people picked it up from different places and they've used it, and that's the important thing. Where
Yeah.
guys like you and Tim and David and now with Siren's Project to get out there with Warren and be able to share the information. That's what it's all about. And I've been very
Okay.
blessed and fortunate over the years to have acquaintances like you guys, and that's kept me going and keeps me wanting to do more. But and
Well,
so
Tim, you mentioned the origins of it. I remember, and maybe I'm wrong, but my memory could. But I thought there was some kind of study done by engineers, interestingly enough, in Sweden, that where they deduced that an open notch would allow the hinge to work longer. That was their part in it, and some of the backup was other people. But I know Soren was involved. But how much of that history can you relay or remember? And you just,
Well, most of
I
it that
mean,
came to the States and really started to spread around the world actually was with Nordfor, which was Soren's, had him and two partners in the Nordfor, and they're still going on today. Uh,
yeah,
they they came out of the Swedish Forest Institute, and it started doing training there, and started spreading out. And then Soren, he managed 18 instructors worldwide. And
okay,
so that was when they sold out Nordfor to Electrolux in the late 60s or early 70s, I guess. And so most everything that came to the United States, and Soren had Richard Lewis and those guys with American Pulpwood Association, American Forest Resources, and they started really pushing the program with the major paper companies and those kinds of things, the risk management, and
right.
Richard Lewis and those guys back years ago, and basically most all of it came from Soren, and he had it going on with every major paper company and mill that was out there, and I had the fortunate ability to travel along with him, and Dave Zerfoss, at that time was Steel, and then later with Husqvarna, gave me the opportunity to tag along with him and pick up what I could. And
Yeah,
it all came from pretty much from Soren to the United States, and a lot of it started off. Soren started with Tilton Equipment Company, really in the States. Dan Tilton became one of his instructors for New England area, and but it all started from Soren coming to the state. Håkan Lundqvist was one of the instructors, and Håkan was Husqvarna for years and years and years. Took on a sales territory because, as everybody in training, they don't like to travel too much. So it works for a while, but they smaller areas, and so most everybody went into the sales side of it. It's
I owe a lot to Dave Zerfoss and Steve Wood myself. But how did you get involved with Soren then in the first place? Did you just take a class from him?
Well, the first time I had a salesman brought in a poster that he had done with John Sered, and
Uh,
he was telling me they had him at a conference, and he was telling me about it, and I started listening to it. Then when I started with Steel, Dave Zerfoss had located Soren at Rocky Creek Logging down in Chapman, Alabama. And he was trying to get together with Scott Paper Company to start the game of logging. Scott Paper actually came up with the competition format of it.
uh,
Soren used competition related to soccer in Europe and USSR and other areas over there. They were doing training. They used points in competition. And Scott Paper wanted to start that. So the first one was up in Maine, and then Greenville, Alabama. And I was asked, because I was a service manager, was asked to come down and help with it. And he had brought down John Adler, and John was really one of Soren's first instructors. And so we got
okay.
involved with helping with him with the logger programs in 3 or 4 areas, and then we also started the collegiate program, and that's how we got
Yeah,
involved with Olds and those, was
yep,
18 different school areas
yep, yep,
and
yep.
then 18 different logger areas, and we kept it all going, and Steele was behind it, and then when Dave left it, they picked it up, and Husqvarna got behind it.
Okay, okay. And someone I saw him in 2020, but we used to be at events together. Tim, Ron, Hartel, myself, and Ken and Rip. But a lot of times the change it would be you, me, and Ron
Yeah.
doing something. And when have you? I think Ron's still okay. I haven't talked to him, but do you stay in touch with Ron?
I haven't heard from him since after you visited with him. I chatted with him after that, but that was
Oh, okay, okay.
there.
Because he was always a little because he was always a little bit on the fringe with the John, well, Poulin kind of, but then with the Johnson, but it was all in the family, so to speak, right?
Yeah, yeah. He was mostly Poland. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
And
then
he for years he did the Christmas tree thing.
yeah, went and did the national Christmas tree cut. Yeah,
Yeah,
and, Barbara
yeah.
Zerfoss got all that started.
Right,
Uh,
right, right, right.
I still hear from them quite often. They're some very good friends.
Oh, good. Well, tell him I said hi. I haven't talked to Dave. I didn't. Oh, good. Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry guys.
Barbara's
It's
probably
turning
on here
into
tonight. You never know. She quite often.
okay.
But
Well,
they
thanks for indulging me and answer my questions. Sorry guys. I always like chatting with Tim, and I'm just taking advantage of it here.
well, we've talked a good bit here over the past few weeks, and I appreciate y'all checking in. And the Thursday night
Right.
saw is starting to pick up a little bit, but the biggest thing is I do the recordings, and we have several hundred start to check it all out. So they hopefully picking up stuff that they can use and think about, and that's the future. Share information and make it worth. Let's see, I got one more here said from BJ Wigglesworth. Just to let you guys know, Tim, you trained us at Elizabethtown, Kentucky Public Works Department last summer, and it was a game changer for us here at Public Works. I have also tried to pass on some of the knowledge to my family and friends. And that's what I like. You know, when people come to one of our classes, whether it's Tim or Dwayne or you know, it's they take it back and they use it. And that's the ticket. And Glenn Moore's on again too, so he's one of Tim's students. And so they just check in, and it means a lot to us. We really do appreciate it. Well, guys, I want to thank you for dropping by. And anytime, let me know if you've got an open Thursday night. All of you, especially. We'll bring up some other topics. Tonight was kind of general chat, but I'd like to keep some different topics going on. And it's great to have guys like yourselves that can give some input and share your experiences, because that's what makes people think and be safe, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
And don't freeze up there. It was
I'll-
10
I'll-
degrees, 10 degrees here yesterday. I can't believe it. They knew you were coming on here. That's what it was. They didn't want
That's
you to
right.
feel out of place.
Well, nice
Okay.
meeting you all again, and nice seeing you again, David. And
Yep.
thanks for indulging Tim and I reminiscing.
Well, gentlemen, I'm going to wrap it up here with a few announcements and stuff, but I appreciate y'all dropping by. If you want to hang around, that's fine. I want to finish up with some of my stuff here, but thank you very much. And I want to say to all of you, good sawing.
See you guys.
See ya. So we had tonight, let's see what happened here. Yeah, we had Dwayne Newstetter from up in Canada with Arbor, Canada, and Tim O'Brien at Cotton Top 3, David Breeden, Husqvarna. Chris Childs couldn't make it. He got tied up, I guess. Robert checked in online, and Warren Causey. And I really enjoyed talking with him. And I appreciate all of you sticking with us here tonight. And, you know, I got these from Chris, who's down in Mississippi last week. And he's down in South Georgia tonight. He's working with a tree company down there that he's going to be working with over the weekend in the disaster stuff, and so it's training going on around. I've got some Zoom workshops that we started, and this one's for new operators and also experience that might be looking for a refresher. And that's a basic chainsaw 2-hour. I had one Tuesday night, went very well. And I've got another one planned for February the 12th, 7 to 9 p.m. The cost is $25. And if you need more information, there's a video on YouTube about it. But you can register and pay for it on our e-store. And that's what we're calling the 2-hour basic chainsaw. And there is a certificate awarded for that. And then Warren's going to be part of this one coming up. I've got about 7 signed up for it so far, but we can stand some more. But this is for experienced operators who want to learn more on teaching and training. It's designed for carrying information from one head to the other. If you're managing a tree company, or you're taking and maybe even supervising a crew, and you want to know how to make sure you can answer questions, that's what this Legacy Instructor program is about. It's going to be 12 weeks on Zoom on Tuesday nights. Right now, the first one will be Tuesday night, and I assume we'll probably continue with that for 12 workshops. And that's starting on January 23rd, 7:30 to 9 p.m., about an hour and a half each session. And that's $1,200 per person. And so any questions on that, you can get in touch with me at info@forestapps.com. And then hands-on training workshops. And Chris has been helping with those, and David is going to be helping me on this one. It's going to be a storm sawing workshop, and it's going to be in Kingston, April the 2nd through the 4th. And if we get enough signed up, we might even be able to talk Tim and coming in over here on that. I don't know. We'll see. But Tim helped us out on some of them. And this program is for new and experienced operators who want to learn more on all facets of chainsaw operations. But right now, I've only got about 4 signed up on that. We try to keep, if we got just the one instructor, about 12 people at max. But that's $850 per person. And any questions on that, you can also sign up for that online. And that's so far, I've got a couple I think fire department guys from West Virginia. And so that's going to be a good class. And that's going to be over at the Breeden Estate. That's over in Kingston, Georgia, David's place. And also, I do have online training consultation. I have people asking, what about this? Can you answer these questions or whatever for our crew? Or I'd like more explanation on this. And I do have that available, and you can register and pay for that online also. But that's something that for any kind of experience that you want to discuss. And if I can't answer it, I'll get these guys back online. So we'll come up with an answer for you on it. And our e-store has a lot of that sign up information. I also have some items from our move. I don't have any place for them. They're over here in a cooler box right now, but I've got all kinds of different things on the e-store, chisel bit, square grind files. I've got, I don't know, probably one pro site left, but I've got plenty of cross sites left, ebooks, and I've got a whole stack of forced applications, e-videos, and that kind of things. But the most thing for fun for me is these Thursday night sessions and live discussions. And these guys have helped me out, and I appreciate them dropping by and being able to answer things. And so Thursday night saws has been a real blessing to me. And I finished up on Tuesday 33 radiation treatments. And my head is doing better. It's affected my sinuses, and it still has a lot of healing to do over here. But they say that it should clear up. My colon cancer, the surgery, I think, took care of most all of that. I've kind of chosen not to do the chemo on this particular round. I'm just going to wait and go in and be analyzed every 4 or 5 months and let them check that out. But hopefully the skin cancer is closed down a little bit, and I ought to be able to make it. Last time it was 15 years ago when I had the first bout with the colon cancer. So hopefully I've got a few more years to go, but I have pretty much come off of the road, and we're gonna take and kind of do things from the studio here, and might do a little bit of outside stuff, helping these guys out if need be, but that's it. Doing some videoing and some conferencing. So that's kind of my plans at this point. But that's tonight, and I appreciate you guys very much. If I can help you with anything, let me know, and I wish you all good sawing. So from Forest Applications and the guys on the Thursday night panel, good sawing to you. See you guys.
See you.
Thank you very much.